Hello, everyone, and welcome to the OnlyLandFans show. My name is Kendall Lejeune, and our guest today is Jesse Bibbee. Jesse Bibbee is a dynamic land flipper skilled in cash flips and seller finance, and recently started working with entitlements. He also has an active role in the Collective Genius, a mastermind for high volume real estate investors. Apart from his real estate acumen, Jesse is an avid endurance athlete, boasting multiple Ironman completions and gearing up for an Ultraman challenge. His passion extends to travel and adventure, making his life a blend of professional rigor and thrilling personal pursuits. Jesse, thanks so much for joining us. How are you today?
I'm great. I'm great. Excited to be here.
Yeah, listen, I've wanted to have you on the show for quite some time. So thanks so much for joining us. Super excited to jump right in. Tell us, how did you get started doing land deals?
Yeah, that's a great question. Last year, really, I was dabbling with houses, right? I was doing some door knocking of pre-foreclosures. I was doing some house flips, some wholesale, things like that. But I was spinning my wheels. And so I took a step back from everything and really just analyzed, like, all right, number one, what do I want my life to look like? Number two, what do I want my business to look like? And when I did that, it was like, okay, if I want more of a location independent business with less overhead, less team members, things like that. I just looked at the deals that I've done in the past. I'm like, okay, what was the easiest and what made the most money? And for me, it was vacant land. And so I thought about it and I was like, okay, when you look at land, right, when you put houses and land next to each other, let's talk about variables and scalability. So in my eyes, like if you just think about it for a second, like how many variables are associated with flipping a house or with even just underwriting a house from every step of the process, from taking an inbound lead to converting that lead to selling that contract or flipping the house, or just like the whole from soup to nuts, the amount of variables it takes to do that is up here, right? And
A
when there's a
lot.
lot of variables, that means someone has to manage those variables, which makes it less scalable and increase talent. And so yeah, when you look at land, there's not a whole lot to it, right? Less variables equals less complexity. Less complexity means it's more scalable, also means there's less team overhead associated with it. And so yeah, I was like, there's a lot more land out there and a lot less competition. And so all of those variables combined, it's like land is it. So long answer.
No brainer. I absolutely love it. You know what I love so much about it as well is how intentional you are about figuring out, okay, what is the lifestyle that I want? What kind of business do I want to own? And how can I achieve that? Like, I think so many of us trip and fall into it, myself included, without being that intentional. So I love how intentional you are. And also, I love that you're a reformed house guy. I am the same way. I got my start doing wholesale houses, and I'm right there with you. When you look at the variables compared to land, it's a no-brainer. So how did you learn? Did you have a mentor or a coach or anything like that?
I took some courses. Really, the one that I'd say the person that kind of initially sparked everything and opened my eyes. And I'm pretty sure him, but Colin Murphy, he did a presentation at Collective Genius about kind of his business model, obviously how he's living in Spain, doing it here in Florida and things like that. And it just really inspired me. So I walked down that path more, took a few courses and just hit the ground running. So
Yeah, Colin is absolutely fantastic. We actually had him on the show last week, and he talked so much about like how amazing the remote quality of this business is. And I think that his business model is just a huge testament to the fact that he's living in Spain, flipping properties in Florida, and like at a good volume, right? Like it's not just like one every now and then. So very cool. What types of land deals do you specialize in now?
kind of everything, to be honest. Say the majority are just cash flips, infill lots, 5 acres, a little bit of rural rec, but I consider infill lots, even like the 5 acre infill lots, as long as it's like a cookie cutter lot in a subdivision like area, I consider that an infill lot. So yeah, mainly infill lots, some rural rec, all over the place.
Awesome. And can you talk a little bit about what was some of your challenges in doing that very first land deal?
The challenges in doing the first land deal was probably just uncertainty of whether it was going to make money or not. The first one I bought was covered in wetlands. And so I bought it for super cheap. But yeah, I think the challenges was just simply not sure if I was going to make money on it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one that a lot of people have. So, can you explain your business model a little bit? Are you buying and then flipping? Are you wholesaling? Are you doing like a mixture of both? What does your business model look like?
Yeah, so only buy it. I only buy everything. No wholesale, nothing like that. I feel like it's a tougher business model to wholesale land. It's much, much easier if you can actually take it down, because then when you're building rapport with the seller and things like that, you can actually be truthful with what you're doing, and it makes things a lot more seamless, in my opinion. So yeah, I take everything down, do a couple double closes here and there, but for the most part, just take it all down.
Excellent. Fantastic business model. I know a lot of people that use that same business model. What are the challenges to closing everything before you turn around and flip it?
It's the two things, it's deals and it's capital, right? If you
Yeah.
got the deals, you're going to run out of capital. If you got the capital, you need deals. And in my case, it's the bottleneck is typically capital. I've gotten pretty decent at raising private money, so it hasn't been an issue yet. But that said, I'd say for the folks that, yeah, for the folks that are taking things down, the bottleneck for them is going to be capital.
Yeah, so it's a great segue into my next question. How do you go about raising capital?
So started out, like I said, I did some houses last year. And so I had private lenders that lended on some of those deals in the past. And so I just spoke with them, said, hey, this is what I'm doing. Here's a couple that I've done on my own already. So you can see a track record there. They already trusted me from past business, but really just starting out with just friends and family. You'd be surprised who within your immediate circle has money that you wouldn't know. And so it's just a matter of looking through your phone, really looking at your family, again, your friends, like who do you know that is doing well in their business, in their life, and might have access to it. So started with that. And then occasionally I'll post on social media, like projects, things that I'm working on, things like that. So I'm planting seeds. And then I've posted a couple times on social media if I've ever needed it that way.
Excellent. Yeah, there's a saying out there that money is everywhere. You just have to look for it. So, can you explain to us, maybe someone that's listening to this and they're like, oh, okay, if I want to go out and talk to friends and family about private money and getting some deals funded, how would you advise them to broach that topic? How do you bring it up? What do you say?
I always start because let's say you're at a family gathering, right? This is one instance, right? It's always, oh, how you doing? You start talking about life, obviously work and things like that come up. I always try to get access to it before I need it. So don't go to them with a deal that you have, right? And say, hey, I need money. This is what I'm doing, right? I just simply have the conversation like, hey, this is what I'm doing. They tell me what's going on in their world. And I just say, hey, look, we always have opportunities out there. If you're looking to place money, here's an idea of what it looks like. I don't know. Honestly, I've never pitched it to them. It's more just been like a fluid conversation about like, how's work? What does it look like? Yeah. So I don't know if that's a good answer or not.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. It gives us a lot of insight. And I think that it probably comes a little bit more naturally to you and to other people that are just used to sharing like what you do. But I do love that idea of just planting the seed and then letting them come to you. Hey, I know that you're doing this kind of stuff. How do I get into this? I think if you let people know, like you'd be surprised how many people are interested in in that kind of thing in our industry.
It's one of those things too. Like I'm not a huge social media guy, but if you just consistently post what you're doing, people are seeing that consistently. So if you just keep on posting and then make an ask saying, hey, I'm looking to bring on some private money partners this year. If you've got money sitting on the sidelines that you're looking to put to work, I'm offering outsized returns. Message me if you're interested. When I do that, you'd be surprised how many people are like, hey, look, I've been following what you've been doing. Looks like you're doing great things. Would love to learn more. Treat them like an inbound lead, right? Put them into a CRM, have a conversation with them, have a pitch deck, right? Show them some past projects, show them what it looks like if it succeeds and what it looks like if it fails as well. So they know they're protected.
Yeah, that's really good. Really good nuggets there. So let me ask, there's a lot of conversation right now around the market and different market shifts and things like that. The market changes that we've seen, let's say in the last year and a half or so, how has that impacted your business model specifically?
I haven't been in business for more than a year.
Oh, that's good. That's really good then. Love it. I love it. So then let me rephrase the question. Where do you see the market going now? And how do you plan to either continue doing more of what you're doing, or do you plan on pivoting or anything like that? What do you see the forecast of the market?
So for me, I see if they start to drop interest rates, it's just natural that stuff is going to start selling a little bit more because obviously with infill lots, people are going to be putting houses on them and things like that. So for me, I'm just looking at the data. If I'm finding areas that are hot, they've got good sell-through rate. And once you get the leads in, and really thoroughly vetting those areas, making sure over the past 12 months, 6 months, 90 days, 60 days, 30 days, has the velocity of sales decreased? Has it increased? Is it staying steady? If 12 months ago you saw that 100 have sold, but then in the last 30 days there's been two, to me that's a leading indicator that things might be slowing down in that specific market. So for me, I'm just thoroughly vetting the areas that I'm marketing to up front, just to make sure that everything that comes through is a property that I actually want to purchase and I feel confident about taking it down. And hey, if the market drops, if we're buying things at 50 cents on the dollar, we can fire sell them and get out of it quickly.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Really good advice there. So let's dig into some nuts and bolts because you mentioned how you go about picking a market. Can you give us the steps to what you do when you are first looking to pick a target market?
Sure. Yeah, I'm a simple guy. All right.
We love simple. And that's also the great thing about land is that it doesn't have to be complicated, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, what I'm doing is I'll pull up a random state. Let's call it Colorado, right? I'm pulling up on Zillow. I'm putting my filters in for the purchase price that I'm willing to purchase in, right? So typically 30 to $150,000 is like the sweet spot. I'm looking at land. I'm looking at what is sold in the last 12 months. And then I'm just quite literally scrolling around Zillow and finding little pockets of clusters, right? This is what a lot of people do. They're just looking at where the activity is. And I'll just go through for 3 or 4 hours and I'll just find a list of 50 areas that look like they've got good activity, right? So you have it on the sold, you find the little clusters, you flick it to the for sale, make sure, okay, in the last 12 months, if there's been 50 lots that have sold within that specific area, and you flip it to sold, if there's 200 up for sale and 50 that have sold in the last 12 months, probably not an area that you want to market to, right? Because you're going to be sitting on that land unless you get it for 10 cents on the dollar and you can sell it for 50 cents on the dollar, you're going to be holding on to that for a while. So I'm just looking through and making sure it has good sell-through rate. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm looking through and making sure it fits the criteria and then putting it to a list, pulling that data and then hitting them with mail and things like that.
Excellent. And so what would you consider a good sell-through rate? Like balanced 50-50 on both the sell side and buy side, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I like to see
1-to-1?
one. Yep.
1-to-1. Excellent. All right, very good. And what you mentioned that you look for, that you have a particular price range that you like to be in, that 30K to 150K. And you also mentioned that you do lots of different types of deals, infill lots, rural rec, that type of stuff. What are some of the other criteria that you have for when you're looking at deals?
What do you mean?
Like when you're pulling a list, for example, right? What's your criteria? Do you care about the length of the ownership? Do you like what do you put into your data pulling platform?
Yeah, so since I'm very hyper focused on specific areas, if I was carpet bombing entire counties, I would be a lot more specific on the data that I pull. But since I'm very hyper targeted, I don't really want to filter it down at all because I want to speak to every single individual that owns land within those specific areas. Because every time I filter it down, it decreases the likelihood that I'm going to get a deal and someone's going to contact me. And so really the only filter that I have is ownership of five or I think 5 or 8 years minimum
Okay,
owner. Aside from that, I want to speak to every single person in there. So
excellent.
LLCs, the whole nine.
Excellent. And so let's talk a little bit about marketing. I know that's a really hot topic for a lot of people in the land space and real estate in general. So what type of marketing methods do you like to use?
I use direct mail, Facebook ads, PPC, build relationships with wholesalers, real estate agents. That's pretty much it.
Excellent. So a lot of direct mail, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
What you mentioned a few different ones there, direct mail, PPC, Facebook ads. Are all of those part of one mail sequence? So like you're retargeting people on the same list, or is it just tell us your thought process behind that? How do you use those different marketing channels?
Yeah. So direct mail is like the targeted, I know what I'm going after. Yeah, I know what I'm going after, and that's that. It's completely separate than Facebook. I do retarget for folks that land on my website, but Facebook is an entirely different beast. I'm targeting nationwide and then just filtering the leads that come in through that. Same thing with PPC. So
Excellent.
they're treated completely differently. Direct mail, again, it's I'm shooting very specific areas, and then PPC and Facebook ads, they're going pretty much everywhere.
Excellent. So direct mail is more like your targeted, super targeted sniper list.
Yeah.
So how many pieces of direct mail would you say you send out a month?
When I was getting started, I was sending out like probably 6 to 8,000 a month.
Wow. Okay. And then how many are you, what is like your response rate and how many contracts would you get out of that?
So I have no idea what my response rate is, but I can tell you it takes me 3,055 letters to get a deal.
That's very good. Can you say that number one more time for us?
Yeah, 3,055 letters to get a deal.
Excellent. And so if someone's listening to this, they may be brand new to the industry and they're like, how does he know? Like I send out X amount, like I send out thousands of pieces of mail. How does he know like down to the number? How did you figure that number out? Share with us.
Yeah, I just looked at when I was because I was projecting for this year and planning for this year. And I don't know, I'm a big fan of planning and forecasting and things like that, but you can't forecast if you don't have the data. And for me, like I didn't track it to super granular when it comes to response rate. I should, don't get me wrong, I definitely should, but I don't. Up until now, I'm getting better at it. But I simply just looked at all of the deals that I've gotten from direct mail, and I looked at how much direct mail I sent out, and I just divided it. If I've gotten this many deals from this many mailers, then it takes me 3,055 letters to get another one of those.
Yeah.
That was
I
my
love
data for 2023. So
Love that. Power of data. And I preach that all of the time to all of my clients, and that you have to track the data to know how your business is performing and to know which levers to pull, right? So with you knowing that number, you're not expecting to send out 2,000 pieces of mail in 1 month and then scratch your head and wonder, why am I not getting a deal? If you know that number is 3,055, you have to hit that, right? To get that one
exactly.
contract.
Yeah. And it's one of those like this business is it's a machine, right? It, that's it, quite frankly. Like there's inputs in the form of the data that you use in different marketing channels. There's a way that you process those inputs to get the outputs, right? So a lot of people just think, hey, if I'm doing 20 deals this year or 40 deals this year, and it takes me $20,000 in marketing spent to get that. If I want to double this, and I need to double that. That's not necessarily the case. A lot of times, if you can get more efficient at processing those inputs in the form of lead management, lead conversion, sales process, things like that, a lot of times you can just get a lot more for less. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, really, really ramping up the actual scale of your business, I think, has so much to do with efficiency and making sure that you are being as efficient as possible before you grow into the next stage of your business. And so I love that so much about inputs and outputs. And so obviously you got very specific in building that machine, because it in your bio, we read that you did 36 deals in your first year, and this was while working full time. So, first of all, congratulations. That is huge. Share with us what were some of the steps that you took to grow that land component of your business while you were also working full time. It sounds like you had to have some type of systems and processes in place to make that happen.
the system and the process, let me back up. The way I structure my day, especially when I was getting started, was I wake up, I train, I go to work until 6, I get home, and this is all that I was doing every night. Because in the beginning, you don't have deals. So it's not like you can pretend to get busy doing deals to make yourself feel productive, right?
Yeah, yeah.
PC and all this kind of stuff. All I wanted to do was find every single area across the country that I could that fit that criteria of the clusters and things like that that I was looking for. And I wanted to just build the biggest list that I possibly could. So that's for me, that's a revenue generating activity, right? That's all I wanted to do. So I didn't care about my response rate for anything. I didn't care about anything aside from finding areas, sending out mail, which is all I was doing in the beginning, and then talking to sellers. Most people try to use answering services. They try to let it go to voicemail and things like that. And that's opportunity. I feel like in the land business, if you just pick up the phone, right, and have a conversation and really nurture that person, you will get so many more deals because most people are just pushing them off to the side, waiting for it to go to voicemail. They're not following up with them if they say they don't want to sell it today. If you can just stay consistent with just doing that, I promise you, you will have a lot more success than most. So,
Yeah, definitely agree with that. The money is in the follow-up. Absolutely.
so to answer your question, after work, I would just go home and I would do everything that I could. And then on the weekends, I would just spend the entire weekends doing it. So I didn't really have much.
Excellent.
So
Got it. Got it. And so can you talk a little bit about what your follow-up process looks like? Because we just talked about that that can make or break your business. And what does your follow-up process look like now?
now. It's still a little sloppy, to be honest, but I just have it in my CRM, right? Once they go into, I just keep them in a warm and a cold bucket, or a warm and a hot bucket. Or the only time they go into cold is if they've sold the property, or it's not a property that I want, or something like that. But I'm pretty much just calling them. I'm going in there every week and calling everyone in there and just seeing what's going on with the property. So it's not super sexy. I don't have automated sequences and things like that yet. It's really just going through the buckets and being like, hey, when's the last time I spoke with Margaret? I just literally just yesterday. Every time I go back into my CRM and call old leads, literally every single time I do it, I get a deal. Just yesterday, right? Someone that I spoke to in early October. Haven't followed up with her since. But I just called her. I was like, I wonder what Margaret's doing. Pick up the phone, call her, say, hey, Margaret, what's going on? Spoke about life, spoke about everything going on. I'm like, hey, look, I know I was at $12,000 before. Here's where I can be now. What do you think? She said, all right, let's do it. So it's
Love it. I love it. That's incredible. Congrats. So, what CRM do you use, by the way?
so right now I'm just using Pebble.
Okay.
Pebble.
Yeah, I use Pebble too. It's a fantastic platform. They actually just released, I don't know if you saw this yet, but they released a follow-up, like an automated follow-up feature thing today. So super excited to check that out. That should make our follow-up processes a lot easier. That's fantastic. So can you talk to us a little bit about how did you manage making seller calls, follow up with the seller calls, like TC for 36 transactions while you were all working full time? How did you manage all of that?
Yeah. So again, when you are buying things, it makes it a lot easier on the TC side, right? Because you don't have to worry about buyers falling out and all this kind of stuff and deals falling apart. It's simply just I'm buying it, I'm giving it to an agent that has done a lot of business in the area, and they're
Mhm.
managing the thing. I'm not really doing TC. I'm just making sure that everything is in line with what's going on, making sure that the deals, everything's good with title and things like that. But I'm not doing a whole lot. They list it, they take all seller calls, they do everything.
Yeah. That's a really good point. That's a really good point that you
Yeah,
make, that you remove yourself from the Dispo process, the TC process, all of that, if you are closing it yourself. So you're just focusing on, like you said, getting your mail out, talking to the sellers.
that's it.
Yeah,
That's it. I'm literally just so, and then during the day, what I was doing is just during lunch, I'd just call people. So
that's it. Pick up the phone, hit the phones.
literally just pick up the phone and call people.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So good. So talk to us about what your mail pieces look like. Are you sending out blind offers? Are you doing neutral letters? What does that look like?
Yep. So I started with blind offers. They were good. I decided to shift away from blind offers because, again, if I'm targeted in an area, I want to speak to as many people as possible. And with blind offers, I feel like it kills a lot of those people off. So I'd rather test my luck just speaking to more people and getting the price, giving them the price verbally. But yeah, I'm just neutral now. Neutral letters.
Excellent.
Yep.
Very good. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that I've heard it said many times before from many different brilliant people that the land business, we're really in a marketing business. And so if the goal of a marketing company is to get someone into a funnel, that way we can constantly nurture those people, one of the best ways to do that is with some type of like neutral outreach, right? Whereas if you're sending a blind offer and it's way too low, they look at your offer, you get one shot, then they throw it in the trash and there's no follow up with that. They're not calling you unless it's to say, what are you doing sending me this kind of offer, right?
Yeah.
You're not opening a conversation that way.
Yeah, 100%. And with that too, number one, it was a bottleneck because you have to price that, or someone has to price that. And for me, I kept on getting held up in certain areas where there was like not quite exactly homogenous pricing. And so I'd pass over those areas. And then I heard a lot of other people saying, oh, if you're finding these specific areas and the pricing isn't exactly, or for the most part, homogenous, like just skip over it. I'm like, okay, in my head, I'm like, if all these people are teaching to skip over these areas, I'm like, I'm just gonna start mailing these areas.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. No competition.
yeah, I
They're
mean,
all
don't get me wrong, there's still definitely people mailing those areas, but
sure.
for me, I was like, look, I'm not going to skip over these areas that have good sell-through rates or good properties, good areas. I'm just going to hit them with a neutral letter and then do the due diligence on the back end.
Excellent. So if you were sending out 6,000 mail pieces a month, I would imagine that's a lot of seller conversations that you're having.
Not really.
Not really?
Not really. I
It's
get
a
like a handful a day,
okay.
maybe.
All right. So you would just schedule it to where, let's say they call you to talk about their offer that you sent and you have a full-time job, you can't get to it, it goes to voicemail, you call them back at lunch. Is that how you did it? Or what was how did
Yeah.
you manage all of the seller calls?
Yeah. So if I was, because a lot of times I'm in meetings a lot of the day, if I wasn't in a meeting and it didn't interfere with the work that I was doing, I'd take it live. If not, I'd get to it as soon as I could.
Got
So
it.
typically
Excellent.
within the hour, no matter what.
Within
So
the hour.
if not live, within the hour.
That's a really good one. That's a good nugget within the hour. So talk to us about what does the structure of your team look like? Are you a solopreneur right now? Do you have a team? I know a lot of people have virtual assistants and things like that to help, but what does the structure of your company look like right now?
Just me.
Wow. Good for
Just me.
you, man.
So I've got a bookkeeper, if that makes a difference.
Excellent. Yeah, that's an important one.
Yeah. Aside from
That's
that, no, it's just me.
awesome. Awesome. Well, I love that. So you mentioned that you do, obviously, your business model is that you take them down, you do close on them. Whenever you sell, do you sell only for cash or do you create notes on the sell side?
I will create notes if it fits the criteria for it. And I only have a handful of them, to be honest. So like the first one I did, I'll do these all day long if I can come across them. I bought it for 55,000. I sold it in 25 or 30 days for 105,000, but I got 55,000 as a down payment and then 950 a month for 67 months. So like in in that case, if I'm recouping the vast majority of, because that's private money, right? That's not my money that I'm funding the deal with. And so I want to make sure I can take all that money out and put it back to do more acquisitions with. And so yeah, if I can get a high down payment, or if the deal just works out, or if I can buy it on seller finance and then sell it on seller finance and just wrap it, I'll do that. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Yeah, very good. Lots of opportunity in that sort of creative deal structuring for sure. So, can you talk to us about what are some of your main deal breakers? Like, whenever you're looking at a property, if it has one of these things, it's out for you.
Road access is pretty much the biggest one. Aside from that, that deal I just told you about, the 55 sell for 105, that was covered in wetlands, right? That thing was, and the buyer knew that, right? They did a wetland test. There was like a small area that they could put, it was 11 acres. There was an area that they could put a house on. So they were cool with it. But for the most part, yeah, just road access is going to be a deal killer, or sell through rate. If something has a horrible sell through rate, I'm just not going to touch it because it will sell at a price, but I just want to park money into it when it's not going to be for a long time. So
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you have money tied up in that deal, that makes a lot of sense. So it sounds like speaking with sellers is a really big part of your acquisitions process. What would you say are some of if you had to pick three of your best tips when talking with sellers, when you're creating relationships with these sellers, what would those tips be?
be truthful with them. I always tell people, like right up front, I'm like, look, when I'm learning more about their story and the property and things like that, I'm like, look, you will make a lot more money if you put this thing on the market. I'm just being fully transparent with you. If you put this on the market with a real estate agent, it will very likely sell for more than what I'm going to give you. Now, that said, obviously, it's going to take you an extended period of time to do so. There's going to be closing costs and agent commissions and things like that. But if you have all the time in the world, I typically recommend just putting it on the market. Right. So a lot of times that can be a great way to uncover their true motivation, because a lot of times they don't want to tell you. But when you say it like that, they're like, oh, I need it for this or I need it for that. So I always go that way. Aside from that, if people are taking deals down, since I'm sending neutral letters too, like most people that I speak to have about 20 or 25 mailers that they're sitting on. Every day when I'm getting calls, they're like, yeah, I get like 20 of these. I've got a whole stack of them. I'm like, yeah, most people that I speak to have probably 30 or 35 people that have either sent a mail or they've sent text messages and calls and things like that. Do you by chance have one of those letters in front of you? One of those ones that has like an offer letter on it, like a purchase agreement? And they're like, oh yeah, I've got one right here. I'm like, okay, go to line 9, right? Because everyone uses the same template. I'm like, go to line
Right.
8 or 9, or whichever one it is. Where you see that, see where it says assignment and marketing right there? What that means is they don't actually have an intention of purchasing your property, right? And so 85% of the people, probably even 95% of the people that are reaching out to you actually have zero intention of purchasing your property. What they're trying to do is they're trying to get this property under contract, tie it up for an extended period of time, and then find someone like myself that's actually going to purchase it. Okay. Now that's all fine and dandy if they can deliver on it. But most of the time, the reason why I'm talking to someone and I get the deal is because that doesn't end up happening and they cancel the day before closing. And it leaves the seller high and dry because they were using that money. They already spent the money in their head, right? And now the issue is that they backed out a day of closing. So if people are
Yeah.
taking deals down, I always try to just dog on the wholesalers a little bit. It works. It works.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's really good. That's a really good nugget. So, speaking of like your price points and things like that, can you talk about your process and when in your process do you actually start doing due diligence? So, when do you start looking at how much you can get for this property, calculating your offer? What part of the process is it after a call comes in? Is it after you talk to the seller for the first time? What does that look like?
Yeah. So right after the initial call, you take down the reference code, and then I just go back and I run it. I run the numbers, I do the whole thing, and then I just reach back out to them, typically within an hour. I'm going to present them with an offer.
Excellent. And so that is after your first initial contact with them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Got it. Excellent. And what is your process for creating those offers? Is there, you'll buy up to 70% or do you have a number? What's like your formula for where you like to be?
Hey there, land fans. If you're enjoying this episode and would like to see more episodes like this, please be sure to let us know by liking and subscribing below.
We're dependent on the area and the price range. So if it's a $40,000 property, $40,000 and below, I don't really mess with anything less than $20,000 for the most part, but I like to be at 50% for that. But I've got a property right now that I'm buying for 150,000, and technically I'm buying it at 72% of market value, or 70 something, or high six. I'm buying it for more than 50%, but
Got it. Got it.
it's because it's worth 230,000. So like for me, what I'm looking for is just my margin, because I've access to inexpensive capital. There's no deal funders. There's nothing like that you have to split it with. And so, yeah, typically 50, I'll go up to 67% typically. Or if it's like a bigger deal, I'll do a little bit more. So
Excellent. And so let's get down to some nuts and bolts for the newbies that are listening, or maybe someone wants to know, okay, exactly where do you go to get different information? So what do you do? Where do you go to pull your list?
for initial marketing,
Yeah, for vacant owners.
priced.
Priced, okay. And where do you go to skip trace your list?
I don't skip trace because
Don't skip trace
no,
because
I'm
you're
not.
not calling. Yeah. Awesome. So if someone doesn't respond to mail, what happens in that process? Do you mail them again or do you not mail them and you take them off your list? How do you go about that?
I mail them typically every 5 weeks.
Okay. Nice. Very good. And so are you using any type of AI in your business right now?
Am I using any type of AI? No. Again, I wish my business was a little bit more sexy, but it's it's not.
Hey man, if it's not
Yeah.
broke, I love it. I love it. Talk to us about what do you consider to be the biggest challenge in the land business?
I think the biggest challenge is consistency for most people. It's making sure that you're consistently sending out mail, you're consistently sending out marketing, you're consistently reaching out to sellers. Most people they get bored doing the basic things, and then they go to try to find something sexy to get them excited again, but all they're doing is tricking themselves, because if you just send out mail or text or whatever you do and just stay consistent with the things that are proven and work, right? Again, it's a machine. The result doesn't care about your feelings. All it cares is that the inputs go in and they get processed. And so for me, like I don't get cute with it. I just do the things that get the results, and I consistently do it, and that's it. So I would tell people, especially if they're getting started, don't get cute, right? Just do the inputs, do them consistently. Don't care about your CRM and setting up automations and all this like just talk to sellers, close deals, send marketing, rinse and repeat. Once you've built up a business to where it's an actual business, you've got money, you've got consistency, you've got deal flow. Start to get cute with it then. But even now, anytime I've gotten off on a little wild goose chase that I thought was going to be, it's not, right? Just
Yeah.
keep on. It just takes me off track. Just stay the course, run the playbook, surrender, just do the things. So
I love it.
I'm speaking from personal experience.
Yes, no, that's so good. And I think that I talk to a lot of people and I think that they like They want some kind of like really cool like hack or shortcut, but there really isn't. It's just a very like this particular business model, it's a very unsexy kind of thing. Just stick to the fundamentals and just rinse and repeat. And then it'll eventually like the compound effect will happen and you will start getting consistent deals.
Here's the hack. Do the work and don't think you're don't get too proud to do the little tasks. Most people, if they think, man, I'm the CEO, I'm the owner of this, but no, you're not. Don't worry about automating the business and pulling yourself out and building a monster team when you've done 3 deals or you've done 5 deals. Just focus on closing more deals, right? That's
Yeah.
literally all this business is. It's marketing and sales. Don't get cute. Just do the things. Because
So good. So
most other
good.
yeah, because most other people are, that's what they're doing, right? They're trying to figure out who they can place in the seats too early, right? That's great when you start to scale, but they go too early and they start putting people in these seats, right? Like a lead manager. A lead manager is extremely important, right? Once you get to a certain point, but I don't know, that's your director of first impressions. That's the person that's picking up the phone and representing your brand, right? You want to make sure that person is skilled and they understand the process, they understand your business, they understand how to truly nurture a seller, right? That's the most important touch point. And I don't know, for me, that's why I don't take it lightly. Um,
No, that is huge. That's fantastic advice. And I completely agree wholeheartedly. Now, there are a lot of people that are just now getting into the land business. They may have a full-time job and they're trying to, maybe they've done a deal or two on the side and they want to start getting more consistent deals, but they say, listen, there's no possible way. There's just no possible way that I can, pull list and scrub the list and send out consistent mail and answer seller calls. I have a full-time job. What do you say to those people?
I'd say that's an excuse. I'd say it is, right? Even if you're calling, even if you, okay, if you truly cannot all day, if you can't return calls, I respect that, right? I had a little bit more flexibility to where I could step out and take a call, or I could make it work. If you can't, then get something like Pat Live. Again, it's not the greatest thing in the world, right? I've listened to those calls and they're not great, but I don't know, I just wouldn't give yourself an excuse, a cop out just because you think it doesn't work. It just takes, again, the result doesn't care. It just needs inputs. It just needs inputs and needs to process those inputs. So it doesn't matter when you do it. It's just as long as you do it, right? In the beginning, for the first half of the year when I was doing it, I wasn't doing any of it during the day. Only once it started getting consistent is when I started blending work and job and things like that, just because I'm able to a little bit more. But before it was just strictly, okay, I'm returning calls after work. Vacant land, the benefit is like the sellers aren't super urgent as opposed to like houses. Because if someone calls you during and they're selling a house, you need to get that thing ASAP because the
Right.
competition is fierce. The benefit to land is you do have a little bit of leeway. Definitely don't use that as an excuse as you grow. But if you're just getting started and you truly don't have the time, you do have the time. You just got to make the time for it.
Yeah, that's really good advice. That's really good insight. So, Jesse, I know with your role with Collective Genius, you are around a lot of investors. You hear a lot of talk about what's working in business, what's not working in business. But what I'm curious about to hear is what is your take on what is something that no one or very few people are talking about in the land industry right now that we should be talking about?
Just treating it like an actual business, quite frankly. I think most people, at least from the year, again, I haven't been in this business for a very long time, so I'm definitely no expert, but I think from the conversations that I've been a part of and the land groups that I've been in and gone to the masterminds and things like that for land, I think people just treat it like a side hustle, and that's why it stays as a side hustle. And I think the vast majority of land people, like if you can treat this thing like an actual business with metrics and systems and processes and like true structure, I think you can dominate, quite frankly. I think you can truly dominate if you treat this thing like a true business. Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah. And so if someone has been treating it like a side hustle and they're like, yeah, I've done a couple of deals a year and that kind of thing. I think if you actually Google like land flipping, you'll get a ton of like side hustle stuff as well because people do treat it like a side hustle. That's a great insight. But if someone has been treating it like a side hustle and they want to now make this a business, do the metrics, do the KPIs, get the systems and processes, where would you suggest that they start? How do they find that information? What would you tell them to do?
Yeah. So what I would do is So for me personally, like 0 to 1, right? Taking this thing like 0 to 1 is I would simply just take a look at the past year, right? And just break it down, right? Start breaking it down in terms of like, all right, here's all the deals I did. Here's where it came from. Here's how much I spent on marketing, how much I spent on my team, and like really just understand your numbers at a much higher level. So like that, the reason I know, okay, it's 3,055 mailers to get a deal. This is how much it cost me. Here's my cash conversion cycle, right? So it takes me about 35 days from when I send mail out to get the deal. On average, it's about 35 days. And then from when I get that contract to when I put money in my bank account, it takes me 68 days on average, right? That's 2023 numbers. Okay. And so I know that my whole cash conversion cycle is 68 plus 35, which I'm not thinking of the math at the top of my head, but so
A little over 100, probably.
so I know, okay, if my goal then is to do X amount of revenue per year, I reverse engineer that in terms of, okay, if I want to do this, then I need to spend this amount on direct mail, and then I need to do all of that before September, right? Because if my cash conversion cycle is 70 something days, right, or 90 something days, then what I'm going to need to do is get that all out before September, because all of that revenue is going to get realized by the end of the year. I can't forecast it to December, because if I forecast it to December, it's going to take me 90 something days from December to actually realize that revenue. So I don't know, that's 0 to 1. Just get an understanding of your numbers, and start there.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I think actually not very many people talk about it, or that I hear people talking about it, is the cash conversion cycle, right? Like people think like there are a lot of people do a great job at looking at, okay, what are my metrics? How many mail pieces or marketing pieces do I need to get out to get a deal? And they understand that. But then there's one step further that it takes time for that deal to actually realize, for you to be funded. And contracts don't pay the bills. You have to
Yeah.
actually close it. And so that's super important. Great piece of advice. Can you talk about what would you consider to be your superpower?
I have the ability to just pull myself out and look at the playing field and just strategize effectively. Yeah, that and just marketing and sales. Just
Really
doing
good.
things. Yeah.
Yeah. And just listening to you speak, I can tell that you like to look at the big picture, which I think that's huge when you are trying to run a business. It's a different mindset, a different perspective than like doing the individual deals, to zooming out and looking at your numbers. And so I think that's so important, but very cool, very apparent. That's your superpower. What's your definition of success?
Just living life on my terms. That's very simple. Just living life on my terms, doing what I want when I want, the standard.
Yeah. Amen. I love it. So
Absolutely.
good. What would you consider that you do differently than most people that has contributed to your success?
I wouldn't, first off, I don't think I'm necessarily super successful in this business just yet. But what I think helps me stand out and convert more deals is what we were talking about before, just quite literally being consistent with getting people on the phone and having conversations, treating every single phone call that comes in. If I see, because I use open phone, if I see a little mailbox, which is the emoji that I use for my phone number, if I see a mailbox, like I look at that, and every single time I look at it, that's $15,000, right? Because that's my average deal size. That's $15,000 that's waiting for me. Okay. Like I don't treat it lightly. Oh, I'm just going to, no, that is $15,000 on the other side of the phone. I'm going to treat it as such. And I'm going to continue to follow up that person until that $15,000 is mine. Okay. So I think just being relentless with my general principle is just getting more for less. Instead of just dumping more money at the top of the funnel, sending more marketing, doing more things with a sloppy, broken process, I just want to get more for less. That's it. So
So good.
however I can do that in the form of finding better areas to market to, finding better marketing channels, finding better ways to convert my leads into contracts, finding better ways to dispo those contracts, right? Like any way that you can make it more efficient so that you don't need to rely on spending more money. I like low overhead, right? I like very low overhead, and you can spend less if you're converting more. So
Yeah, music to my ears. I love that. You can spend less if you're converting more. I think that needs to be on a poster in every entrepreneur's office. That's so good. It's so
yeah,
good. I love it. Who are your favorite like entrepreneurs, business owners, thought leaders, authors that you like to follow?
I would say, who's my favorite? Probably Alex Hormozy.
Yeah,
It's like
I
he's just He's a hot topic. I know that's probably
Yeah.
not a standard answer, but he says things in a way that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally that answer does not surprise me. I'm a huge Hormozy fan. I think we probably have talked about that before. But your answer about being consistent and doing the boring things, like I actually literally just saw him talk about that in like a reel or something the other day, is like the people that win or the people that can commit to doing the boring things day in, day out that are going to drive revenue to your business. Plain and
100.
simple.
That's
Yeah.
again, and that's why I know this interview probably isn't the sexiest thing in the world, but here's the thing. Look, while everyone else is focused on like building out their AI and having it integrate and having it break, but then they're fixing it and it starts to talk to people, right? Like it's doing all these things. They're I'm just picking up the phone. I'm calling that same seller. I'm building an actual relationship with them. I'm closing the deal. So like at the end
Yeah.
of the day, that's what this business is. So don't get sexy, don't get cute. Just do the things that get the result at a high level consistently. And I promise you, it's not hard. It's very simple. It's not easy. It's not easy, don't get me
Yes.
wrong, but it's simple. So,
Love it. So good. So good. What's the biggest surprise you've had so far on your journey into the land space?
what would my biggest surprise be? Cash conversion cycle. I thought it was going to take a lot longer to sell land, but honestly, most of my deals sell relatively quickly. I'd say that.
That's good. What do you contribute to your deals selling relatively quickly?
I price it well. I price it under market value. I get good pictures of it. I make sure that the agent that I'm using has worked in that area before. A lot of times I already have sellers for the properties. I make sure to, yeah, just a lot of that's like the stuff that you can control. And then also just picking areas that, again, if you pick an area where stuff is red hot, right? Again, there's a fine balance between everything and too much supply and a lot of different things. But at a high level, like if you find an area that's hot and you bring inventory to that market at a reasonable price, it's going to sell quickly. So for me, I just want to make my spread and get out. I don't need to make the most money. I want to make my spread and get out of there. So, so
That's it. That's it. If you
yeah.
could go back and tell yourself one piece of advice when you first got started in the real estate industry, what would it be?
In the real estate industry, don't listen to other people's advice, quite frankly, unless they're building the business that I want, if unless they're living the life and building the business that I want to run and live. Don't, because everyone's got their opinions, right? Because if you talk to 10 different land investors, they're going to say, oh man, you should start texting, right? Texting, that's going to get you all the deals, right? It's going to cold calling. You need to do like this and that and this and that. But at the end of the day, if you can just pull yourself back and have a very good understanding of what you want your business to look like, what you want your life to look like, what your strengths are, what you do want to do, what you don't want to do, because you can start, like I started to text, but there's a lot of different costs that are associated with marketing, not just the actual cost of doing it, but the cost of the cognitive burden associated with that marketing channel. And there is a cognitive burden for processing texting leads. Even if you have someone doing it, there's a cost for that too. And so for me, I would advise people to only take advice from, I would take it with a grain of salt, right? But just make sure that the person that's giving you the advice is running the business that you want to run, because everyone's got their opinions, but unless it's in line with what your strengths are, right? If you're not a sale like a if you're not like a hardcore sales guy and you're starting out in land, don't start texting, right? You're going to get overwhelmed with a bunch of leads that you're not going to be able to process, right? Or if you have a full-time job, you probably shouldn't start texting, right? Because there's a lot of different things that are associated with that. For me, that's why I chose direct mail, because I don't get a ton of leads. I get a couple leads, I convert them at a high level, and I keep going, and I just keep on doing that. Yeah, that may be harsh or contrarian. I just think only I see so many people chasing different rabbits because they heard this guy's doing that or they heard that guy's doing that, but they don't realize all like the other costs associated with doing those things because of different reasons. But yeah, I just want to make sure that when I'm taking advice from someone that they're running the business that I want to run, it matches with my strengths. It matches with what I do want to do, with what I don't want to do, before I just start doing a bunch of random things that people tell me I should do.
Yeah, no, that's really good advice. And I think it comes back to the very first thing that you started our interview with today is that intentionality, being intentional about what it is that you want to build. And so one of the things that I think I love the most about the land industry is that there's so many different ways to skin the cat. So like your business may look completely different from mine and we can both be successful. It just depends on what your strengths are and what your goals are, what your definition of success is. And so I love that extra layer of filtering is okay, yes, take it, learn as much as you can, but also consider the source and consider what is that piece of advice is working for them to create this result. Is that the result that you want? Yeah,
Exactly.
really good stuff. So, what's your biggest passion or goal you'd like to achieve at this point in your life?
At this point in my life, I would love to just build a big old business. To be honest, I'm the work phase. I thought the big vision was for me to travel and work while I'm traveling. I did that for 3 months last year, which was great. I traveled Europe. I did the land business. I got to take the cool pictures of my computer with a beautiful ocean in the background. But at the end of the day, I'm like, man, all I want to do is I just want to build this business. Like I just want to do deals. And so right now I think I'm in the growth phase. Like I just want to grow this thing. I just want to build it. That's just what I'm passionate about right now. Aside from that, like growing an amazing community with Collective Genius, bringing on rock solid investors there. That's what has helped me shorten the time to get the success is because when you're in a room, like for example, one of our groups that has 165 members in it, right? All doing between 30 to about 100 plus deals a year. And when you look and 165 other people in the room that are doing volume at that scale, it just breaks your limiting beliefs of what you think is possible. And it just becomes normal. And yeah, just excited about CG, excited about the business, excited about the endurance events and things like that. But yeah, I'm just in a hustle phase right now. Won't last forever, but right
Hey
now it is.
man, I say chase after it as long as you want to do it. I think if you ever feel like you're not in a hustle phase, I think that maybe you're bored or something, right? I think that we all feel like on some level, like we're all still hustling, like we're all still growing and building. What makes you feel inspired or like your best self?
I would say when I'm building, like when I am, I'd say when I'm just being stretched, like when I'm growing, when I'm being stretched. That's why I love the races. That's why I love this business because like you feel like I like making progress. So
Yeah. So
that's what
what kind of advice would you give to people who don't like to be stretched or are trying to figure out how to deal with that uncomfortable feeling of growth? Because I think that's absolutely essential in creating any type of business, building, growing. You have to grow individually, you have to grow internally, you have to stretch as a business owner. That's part of the growth process. And so, what type of advice would you give to people who are super uncomfortable with that?
yeah, I again, this is a Hormozy thing that like it made a lot of sense, right? It made me feel understood. But this is what he says. He says right, like you expected it to be hard. This is what hard feels like, right? Like you expected it to be uncomfortable, right? To talk to this is what uncomfortable feels like. But these are the inputs that it takes to get the outputs. So you just need to do the things. So I don't know. I think it's critical. If you don't feel like you're being stretched, and I'm in a new phase right now. I'm like, man, I've got a lot of land, a lot of private money, a lot of things going. I'm like, this makes me super uneasy. But at the end of the day, that's what it takes to get to the next level. And you should just feel okay with that, or not feel okay with it, but you just need to accept that that's what growth feels like. Quite frankly, like you knew it was going to be hard. You knew it was going to be uncomfortable. You knew it was going to be all these things. So once you get to that point where it is, this is just what it feels like. So be okay with it.
Yeah,
So,
embrace it. Get familiar with it and move forward. I love that. I love
so
that so much. So, if you could go back and teach yourself one thing when you were first starting out, you've had a year in the industry, you've done 36 deals, which is incredible. If you could go back and teach yourself one thing, what would it be?
sales process, like when lead comes in, right? Like I think the marketing and stuff like that, that's pretty straightforward. But when the lead comes in, having a very solid sales process, if I would have had that from the get-go, I probably would have had more deals. I didn't in the beginning.
So tell us a little bit more about that. What does that solid sales process look like for you right now?
So it's typically a two-step two-phone close or two-step close or whatever you want to say. Step one is more of like lead comes in. Again, I'm still doing everything. So let me make that caveat. Lead comes in, I'm getting the reference number, I'm getting all the information, I'm building a relationship, setting the stage for the next call. So set the stage for the next call, do all my homework, have it all prepped for the second call. Then I call them back, just say, hey, look, this is what looks like other investors are paying XYZ for land based on all these things. Is that what you expected? And they tell me either yes or they tell me no. And if they're like, no, that's terrible, I'm like, okay, great, that's not my offer.
Yeah, that's a great one. That's a great
Yeah,
save.
yeah. And so, yeah, I say, yeah, based on my underwriter, this is what he came out with. Honestly, I'm not really 100% sure about what my sales put me on the spot.
Sorry.
That's okay.
No, but it gives us a really good flow because some people I know so many people, and I was like this when I first started, was like the minute I see a lead come in, I want to hurry up and do all of the due diligence and see what the numbers are before I even get on the phone with someone. There's just some kind of safety in like knowing what the numbers are, because what if they ask you, right? What if they ask you what your offer is and you're not ready to give it and all this other stuff? But I think it makes total sense. Like we use a two-step process in my business as well. I really love it for a lot of those reasons. And yeah, we got your answer. It's good. It's good.
Yeah, and on that first one too, if they're asking for the number, be like, look, the purpose of this call is to just really get a better understanding of what the land actually looks like. We're not one of those companies, I'm sure you get all the time, where they just blast you random numbers. Like, how are they supposed to give you an accurate number if they're just blasting it with no context? That's why it's important for us to spend a little bit more time here. I want to know more about the story. Tell me the history of this land. Tell me what's been going on with it. Tell me, paint me the picture of what this land looked like and what made you inspired to purchase it or inherit, like whatever it looks like. And then on the next call, after we do a little bit more homework, I can get you an accurate number. But I want to make sure that I respect your time. I respect the offer that I give you, and it's not just some random number that has no meaning behind it. So I think it's an advantage if they ask you on the first call what your offer is, and you can pitch that to them.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, there's so many great things about that sets up the seller, and to have sort of this positive framework and so many positive like psychology things are at play there. You're really asking them to sell their property to you, right? Instead of coming in as like a motivated buyer, right?
Yeah.
I think it might sound like it's not like a big distinction, but I really think that it is. I think if you go in and they can tell that you're just hungry to buy a deal,
Oh, yeah.
then they're like, you come to me, like you sent me a letter, you make me an offer. That's a completely different conversation than the one that you just explained.
100%. They are buying my money. I am not buying their land. Anytime they start getting aggressive, I just pump the brakes. I'm screeching on the brakes. I'm backing out, right? Like taking a couple steps back, because again, we aren't the right fit for everyone, and that's totally okay, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
if you try to jump all over people and get aggressive, like that's a way to get more deals, is to just take a step back, apply tactful pressure, but don't push so hard because it turns people off, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's so good. So good, Jesse. Jesse, I want to thank you so much for giving to us today. You've just been so generous with your knowledge and your time. So, how can we give back to you? What are you looking for now? Are there any like connections or resources that you're looking for right now?
Not necessarily. I think I'm more than happy if people need help with deals, if people need help with coming up with things or getting over mental hurdles for getting started and all that kind of stuff. More than happy to give you a pep talk or help you underwrite deals, anything like that. Yeah, I'm just happy to be a resource. If anyone needs anything, feel free to reach out to me anywhere. If anyone has entitlement deals, big acreage, would love to partner with you on those.
Awesome.
But aside
So
from that,
let's say that we have a big entitlement deal. We got big acreage. We're like, hey, Jesse is looking for this. How can we get in touch with you?
you can find me on Instagram, just Jesse Bibbee, JESSEBIBEE.
Excellent. We'll go ahead and put that in the show notes as well. Jesse, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Thank you guys so much, Jesse. This has been an absolute pleasure. Wishing you all the best. Thank you guys for joining us. Until then, take care. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Have a good week. If you're interested in hearing from other 6- and 7-figure land flippers about how they've built and run their businesses, then check out my group, OnlyLandFans, where I do a live interview each week inside the group. You can grab that link at the description below. Until then, be great, have a great week, and catch you in the next one.